want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with the dude and the Ramras. That's Golan, and I want to thank everybody, as always, for all the love they are giving us.
You have to do that like Barry White. Do it again. Try it again.
All the love they've been giving us. And I could do the radio voice. I could be like, after Rain Man, I used to walk around saying, next, bam, the future of rock and roll. And you got to have a little levity in our lives, very serious times we live in. But Golan, I was talking to somebody yesterday that's an editor at a news site. Great, probably one of the most fantastic, best editors I've ever met. And he has a 72-hour rule, for himself at least, that he won't write or report on a story until everything has come out. Now, I know that nobody wants to do that because everybody wants to be the first to report. So, for instance, Men sent us a story today, and by the time we looked at it a couple hours later, we realized, well, maybe we shouldn't talk about that story. There's a lot of wonkiness involved. Can you imagine if people actually followed this rule?
I think it's a genius idea because let's be honest, we don't need the news right now. There is almost never, unless you're getting a tsunami warning because the water is coming, you don't need news right now.
Or shooter in downtown.
Right, exactly. Something where it's like, duck, that's news right now. Besides that, nobody needs it right now. News outlets today care more about being first than about being right. And the news, the whole effing point of the news was to give you information that's accurate. And all we're getting is a flood of inaccuracies. I like the 72-hour thing. I'd never heard it before, but I love it because in the first 72 hours are when you actually can do your research. You can actually verify. You can actually check sources. The New York Times might have had 10 seconds to go, looks like that kid has a bunch of deformities and pre-existing conditions and probably isn't starving. Let's not put that story up. Once misinformation hits, we know this and we've said it over and over again on this show. Even one exposure causes people to believe it's true. Fake news sticks fast. What's the old adage? The lie can go around the world before the truth even has time to put its shoes on. That's true. And the statistics say, and this is something that it's staggering, over 2/3 of online stories contain errors. Okay, I used to teach a class in media bias. This is one of those stats. And by the way, that was years ago. It's probably worse today. But it used to be 2/3, which was already bad enough. Today, it's even more now. So it's probably 100% contain errors. And most of those errors rely on secondary rather than primary sources or unnamed sources. Speed kills accuracy. I actually love this. This would kill the era of sensationalism and maybe bring back a little actual reporting.
Never going to happen. And the story that I brought up was some congressman was lit on fire by some guy, and it seemed like it could be a hate crime or something. It turned out it's not that. We don't know what it is yet, but we're just not going to talk about that one. Moving on.
But it was funny that I brought up that the guy had 4 names because usually they're all 3 names. This guy.
They weren't Spanish. Like in a lot of Latin countries, they do that. They take the mother's last name, the father's last name, the grandmother's last name. Who knows? But we got to mention, we're still here. There was no tsunami last night. We got all ready. I had a little group chat that we put together for all the neighborhood, and we all just pulled sources. My fire chief buddy friend sent me the info, and he's like, "Look, it looks like it's just going to be some high tide, weird waves in the harbor. You're going to be good."
America, the worst America got it was 5-foot waves in Hawaii. And then I was like, oh, let me see what happened to Mend. He was videotaping his house for insurance purposes. What happened to Mend? Some choppy water.
Yeah,
well, that story became a lot less exciting as time went on.
But again, that's something that a warning should be put out on. And I get it that it's wishful thinking. And I do have a lot of respect for my friend that actually follows this type of lead. And obviously we're not going to get it. Obviously, one of the big reasons we're bringing this up is because the picture seen around the world that everybody is now telling Israel to sue the shit out of the New York Times because what they have done, the atrocity they have committed with this picture when they knew it was fake. And we have to correct ourselves. They did not make a correction on the story.
No, I was clear that they did.
Yeah,
I was clear they didn't apologize and they didn't make a correction. Again, I'm going to repeat it because it is shocking. The New York Times has an X account. That X account has 50 million followers. They also have a New York Times PR account. It's like the mini-me version that has 50,000 followers. That's where they posted their story. Not a correction, not an apology. They said, we received additional information. That kid had some deformities and pre-existing conditions. The end.
Yeah, they should have done a front page mea culpa. Sorry, we've tarnished our own reputation. We apologize for this. It'll never happen again. And we're putting this, that, and the other in place so it doesn't happen again. But no, they're not doing any of that.
Can I tell you something, though, amazing to me is we all find news we want to find, regardless of the source. And that's what I'm learning. And that's what we're learning. It's like Republicans never trust the New York Times. It's like we don't touch the New York Times. But all of a sudden, there's a certain segment, let's say 30, because there was a Gallup poll out today that came out that Republicans, 71% still support Israel against Gaza. So that means 29% don't, obviously. So that means 29% are, in a sense, buying the New York Times type of story. It's amazing when people buy things that they normally wouldn't accept anything else they say. Every lie they've done about Trump, every malicious thing they've said about conservatives. But the Israel picture, that they trust, man.
I don't know who trusts that. The Republicans.
All the same people on TikTok who praise bin Laden. They're the same people.
Yeah,
the stupid people
yeah,
who just believe whatever shit is shoveled down their throats.
The common thread is stupid. Stupid. And, you know, a lot of people have no sense of purpose these days. So they're living these cushy lives. They're in the suburban areas. They don't really have any hardship and they don't know what their purpose is. So then they attach themselves. As I mentioned yesterday, the amount of press that the Gaza war gets compared to the war in Sudan or any other major conflict where hundreds of thousands of people are dying, like real conflicts that they did not start. This one gets all the attention. You have all these people that feel like they need to attach themselves to something. They need to be these social justice warriors without any critical insights as to what this actually means, who's right, who's wrong. None of that matters. So when a picture goes on the front page of the New York Times, it doesn't matter what the article said. It just said Israel starves Gaza. That's all they need to see with a picture of a child, and it is over. Look at all the people who still believe in the Russia collusion hoax.
60% of Democrats.
How many?
60% of Democrats.
60%. How many
Shocking.
people still believe that Trump called the neo-Nazis in Charlottesville fine people?
Well,
That
we
was
know
a hoax.
Billy Joel after watching his documentary, and I'm sure.
Same thing. I mean, you see the same thing over and over again, and what it proves is that they just read the headlines. There's no critical thinking. They just go with whatever mainstream media tells them to go with. And a lot of people trust the New York Times. I mean, that was the gold standard for news. So they've lent their reputation to Hamas.
Golan, before, well said, but I think he missed the point I was trying to make is that people on the right will use sources that they never trust just to fulfill a need of hate. And it goes both ways. People on the left, as we've brought up, will cite certain places in Israel that they hate just to use them as a source. So this is a very dangerous thing, and we need to call out people as they're doing this. You can't be a Republican. I mean, really, you can't be a conservative and ever cite the New York Times. You simply cannot. If you're doing that.
It's the cognitive dissonance. We've talked about this before. This is, okay, there is a concept. For those of you who haven't heard us speak about this, it's important for you to hear it because then you'll recognize when you do it. There is a concept. If you look at a newspaper, let's say you are an expert in, I don't know, cobbling shoes, and there's an article about shoe cobbling, and you're like, wait a minute, all of this information that's not how you cobble shoes. Now you know that the paper of record is incorrect in its reporting. Then you flip the page to something you know nothing about, and you're like, I'm learning so much about digging ditches because you don't know enough to be able to call it out. But you're already aware that the paper you're reading is inaccurate. You're already aware that the reporting is faulty. But instead of recognizing that it carries over that faultiness, instead you wipe your memory like an Etch-a-Sketch, and now suddenly you trust. That's cognitive dissonance. This is something that it's a human thing to do. So don't feel shame in doing it. But now that you've heard it, you'll be more cognizant of it when it happens to you. And it will, because it's something that even I, as someone who shouts about it on a regular basis, I find myself reading articles and nodding along and then going, wait a minute, these are the people that yesterday gave me something that I know has been debunked already. So be aware of it. Also, men, to your question, the last time they did a poll on this was 2017, a minute. But in 2017, it had been long enough since then. 42% of all Americans believed that Trump said fine people regarding Nazis. 84% of Democrats believed that in Charlottesville he said that. So, and by the way, even 19% of Republicans did.
Heck, his lawyer at the impeachment trial, and I'm blanking on his name right now, he believed it until he actually watched the full video and read about it. I want to move on, though, to your favorite subject, because I think this really needs to get touched on. Trump just announced the United States has a full and complete trade deal with the Republic of Korea. The deal is that South Korea will give the United States $350 billion for investments owned and controlled by the United States and selected by myself as president. Additionally, South Korea will purchase $100 billion of LNG or other energy products. And further, South Korea has agreed to invest a large sum of money in a lot of things. It's an awfully long Truth Social post by him, so I won't read the whole thing, but you get the point.
It's amazing. I mean, following on the European trade deal, which it's important to note, every single economist and all the so-called experts said that Europe would never go for a trade deal with Trump. They just said they would be defiant and they were not going to do it. It was the impossible deal. And here we are. They just signed the trade deal. Howard Lutnick stated this. He goes, this is what they agreed to. 15% across the board trade tariff. They send $600 billion a year of goods into the US. So that's going to turn into $90 billion a year to the Americans. And they have a market that's $20 trillion. Their economy is $20 trillion. For the first time since World War II, we're going to be able to send goods into that market. So they were very protectionist. They didn't allow us to send our seafood and our equipment, whatever it is. Now it's completely open. We are open to a $20 trillion market. So if you're a little widget maker in Arkansas, you could now sell that widget to the Europeans. And this is a win on so many levels. The experts said he couldn't do it. It was
the experts said we'd be in a depression and a recession at this point. And I just have one question for you, and I'll go to Golan. Why is it that we still use widget? I mean, seriously, it's been used for God knows how many years.
All-encompassing word. It could be anything. A widget could be anything. It could be a car. It could be a plane. It could be a screw or a bolt.
Thank you very much for your clarification.
You're welcome.
I never knew that to be the reason. Golan, but promises made, promises kept. I know you were a little skeptical about this. Everybody was a little skeptical about this 90 days, but it goes to what I always say. When has Trump been wrong?
Well, and remembering, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back a little bit here, despite my incorrectness at the beginning, because I didn't say it would tank the economy. I said I didn't like the way it was being rolled out in kind of a haphazard manner, and I still kind of stand by that despite the results. But I didn't think it was going to fail because I thought that this was meant to be used as a cudgel for that, as we said early on, right? That this was something that might be used to get other countries to fall in line. Because if you have the biggest stick in the room, use the biggest stick in the room. Other people are going to fall in line. So on that we agreed. I didn't love the way it felt like on Monday it was going in, on Tuesday it was dropping out, on Thursday it was coming back in. I recognize now there was also strategy to that chaos. But I'll say that in terms of all the, using big air quotes for those of you who are listening and not watching, respectable economists and globalist think tanks that all claimed the economy was going to tank and all of our alliances were going to be destroyed. And I believe at one point there was the phrase trade war apocalypse bandied around. And it's pretty shocking to see not just that it worked, but how wrong they were. So whether they were wish casting that Trump was going to fail or whether they just really were that bad at their jobs. China got crippled by Trump's tariff policy. Mexico caved instantly. South Korea, now here we are. We have an unbelievable thing. The EU just happened, and he's going to China. And the EU deal, which France called dark days for the EU, was unbelievable. Even Japan did. This is an unprecedented string of wins on the back of the thing that everyone thought was going to be his greatest failure. All these experts thought was going to be his greatest failure. I don't know how they're not so ashamed that they either don't just do the Japanese ritual suicide, harikari, or at least come out and say, hey, we really screwed up. And you know what? We're going to do better. Nobody has done that yet.
Wait, what? You're not talking about the Japanese. You're talking about the experts have to come out and.
No, I'm talking about the Japanese art of suicide should be applied to the experts.
Yeah, listen, if they did that to anything, I mean, there were so many failures throughout the last 8 years that if that was the gold standard, people who did that, we would be a lot better off. And what I mean is like
4 years.
4 years. Let's say the police chief in Uvalde, Texas, he should have taken his own life. The security guard outside the school who didn't go in.
By the way, let's just put the caveat. We're not advocating for anyone committing suicide or dying. We're saying metaphorically.
Some of them, I think, maybe a little bit. All right, anyway,
I don't know.
Metaphorically.
Here's the one thing with the trade and negotiating ends to these wars, everything that Trump is doing is that if he can't see it through, which is what the other side does. They try to spoil it so he can't see it through. But if he makes it through, and it's a game of chicken, again, if the other side, if the Europeans don't think that he's going to fold, if they don't think that enough Democrats are going to put pressure on Trump to somehow abandon this trade war, then they would hold firm, right? They would say, let's just hold out a little bit. A perfect example is when I have two of them. One of them is when Zelensky came to the White House and he was prepped by Schumer and the Democrats. Don't give in to Trump. You hold firm. And then he got a little bombastic in that meeting and they had to publicly smack him up. So what that did was, one is it emboldens the Russians, but also it screwed up Zelensky's own bargaining position. Another perfect example is at the end of the last Trump term, he had maximum pressure on Iran. If he had been able to keep that in place for another, say, 6 months to a year, they would have folded. It would have been done. There would be no October 7th. There would be no war with Iran. They were done. He bankrupted them. What did the Democrats and Biden do when they came in? They refunded them, which lubricated all of the pockets of every single terrorist organization in the Middle East. And that's why the Middle East is on fire right now. It's on fire as a direct result of the failed democratic policies. And those same policies are being rolled out across Europe right now. So as Golan perfectly said yesterday about the Gaza hostages and the UK saying, if you don't have a deal by this and this date, we're going to grant them a state. So what does that tell Hamas? That tells Hamas, don't get a deal till that date. And in return, you're going to get a state. So it does the exact opposite of helping release the hostages. It incentivizes them to keep the hostages. And these hostages are not all Israeli. I just had a story today. We put it up on our Daily Cheat Sheet Instagram story, but it's of I think a Thai or a Nepalese guy who's still in a tunnel somewhere. This guy has a family. They're longing for his return. He's not Israeli. He was there to learn agriculture and he's still being held hostage. So the UK and these people are doing the exact opposite of maximum pressure. They're doing whatever the opposite of maximum pressure is called, but they are incentivizing them not to make deals, not to go for peace.
Very well said. And I want to wrap this up a little bit, but Golan, to your two points. What seems haphazard for Trump is how he built a career and a life. Just to give you two examples, the women's skating ring in New York City, right, when it could never get built, Trump came out and said, I could build it in 3 months or however many months. He had no idea how he was.
He fixed it.
He had no idea how he
were going to close it.
When he came out and probably said that, he had no idea how the hell he was going to do it, but he said it and he did it. The second one was the Commodore Hotel, right? When his dad said, you're crazy to go into New York City. It was in the late 70s, early 80s when the city was, now it is again, a shit show. And he fixed it up. He just turned crap into gold.
That's part of the Trump legendary playbook. Still to this day, even for people who dislike Trump, it is still considered one of the greatest real estate resurrections in New York City history. And it's something that he's done multiple times. But I also think that what he does is what a lot of type A people do, where they recognize that when they have a deadline, even if they don't have a plan, they're going to figure it out by that deadline.
He's like the Hannibal Smith of presidents.
Exactly.
And if Men does not get that reference, it's from the A-Team.
I don't. Oh, Hannibal, yes. But he also...
I love it when a plan comes together.
When he bought Mar-a-Lago, he opened it up to blacks and Jews. I mean, that place was racist and anti-Semitic. They didn't let these people in. He was the first one that let like Diddy have a part. Was it Diddy? He had let someone have a party at Mar-a-Lago. Oh, if I want to bring up Diddy right now, but anyway, long story short, he helped Jesse Jackson. And this is the guy, didn't he get an NAACP award?
Yeah. Listen, Al Sharpton praised him. Jesse Jackson praised him. They would have given him a street in New York City, for God's sake. That's every rapper had him in a song, and every rapper had him in a TV show.
Until he ran as a Republican and they thought he could win. Even Oprah said he should run for president until he looked like he had a shot at winning. And then they go, oh, boy.
By the way, it's an important thing to note because there are many underreported stories about Trump, and many of them having to do with him helping the Black community or helping the Jewish community. There's famous stories. You can go look them up. We don't have to get into the whole thing because then it becomes like story hour.
I don't even think it's about helping a specific community.
That's not what I mean. I mean the underreported stories that they specifically make sure they memory hold because it makes their narrative of this guy's a racist disappear. Right? If you found out that there was no place in Palm Beach that allowed blacks and Jews, and this guy was the first one to say, screw that, I'm letting everybody in because I don't discriminate. And then you try to tell everybody who now believes he's a Heil Hitler acolyte. No, he's the guy who let them all in. He's the one who opened it up. He's the one who would have hidden you during the Holocaust. They're like, does not compute. That's what I'm talking about.
You bring up a very good point, and we'll just put it in comparison. Biden was Biden wasn't a good guy. He's notoriously not a good guy.
And what was it, the 1984 crime bill that Biden passed that was 3 strikes? He put more black people in jail than anyone else in this country.
I hope you said 1994. But Golan, when you look at pictures with Trump and his grandchildren and his children, and I don't remember a president. I know Nixon, thank God, everything was copacetic with his family and they're great people. But I can't think of a president with children and grandchildren, and you juxtapose that. Forget about Hunter Biden and forget about all that stuff. Listen, addiction is addiction. I mean, I'm not taking Hunter Biden off the guy's a degenerate, whatever. But the fact that when he didn't recognize his grandchild, that she existed.
It's not recognized. He didn't acknowledge her. It was his own grandchild, and he refused to acknowledge her as his grandchild. This poor little girl said, oh, my granddaddy's the president. He never wanted to have anything to do with her. I don't know what kind of sick individual would do that, but that was that guy.
Yeah. And moving on, I want to go to this Kash Patel finding burn bags in the FBI of documents Golan. This is going to be another one of those underreported stories. It'll be like, oh, there was nothing in the burn bags. This is normal procedure to burn bags of classified documents. Or, I mean, can you imagine? Go back to Mar-a-Lago when they sent the FBI SWAT teams boxes out that to this day we know were filled with nothing. And, for people that listen to The World According to Ben Stein, and just so everybody understands, when everything in Washington gets the word classified written on it. Ben worked in the White House. It could be like putting the National Enquirer in a manila envelope and they'll write classified on it. And I'm not kidding either. I'm not kidding. They'll take pictures and put it in a thing and write classified.
So legendarily, when I worked for people in the government, they told me that after they would decide what they had for lunch, they would take the menus and put them into classified envelopes.
That's exactly right. That is not a joke. So this will be an underreported story. They'll come up with something. They'll say this is normal procedure, but there's nothing normal about what Kash Patel found.
Yeah. First of all, can we explain what an FBI burn bag is?
Please do.
All right. So
that's why I have you on the show.
I mean,
read the headline. I let you read.
There you go. Random useless information. Here we come. Yeah. FBI burn bag is basically, it's a designated container. It's not always a bag, but often it is. But it could be a box. It could be any number of things. They still call it a burn bag. And it's basically designed for the disposal of classified documents or sensitive documents or however things are labeled, something that is not meant for all eyes. And the idea is once it's no longer needed, once it's been used for whatever information needs to be used for and can be destroyed, but it can't be discarded through regular means. It can't just be thrown away. It can't just be, put into a landfill or something. It has to be usually burned. That's why the burn bag. And that way nobody can reconstruct it. They don't do shredding. They used to do shredding. They found that people could actually figure out how to put the puzzle back together. So eventually everything got burned. And there's a whole thing behind it in terms of chain of custody, making sure that everyone knows exactly whose hands it was in prior to burning it.
And it
What
was in a
doesn't
secret room.
happen, and that's the thing, what doesn't happen is that documents that are still actively being investigated or part of an active investigation are not put in burn bags and then piled in a secret room that no one had ever seen. Unless maybe you're in a Tom Cruise movie and I have to hang from the ceiling to figure out what the hell is going on. Because this sounds like fiction, and it's not. So what just happened now, as Judah mentioned, Kash Patel found literally a secret room at FBI headquarters that no one had ever seen before, full of burn bags. And the burn bags were full of classified Trump Russia, quote unquote, Trump Russia files and things that had never been revealed before, had not been passed along. That's the other part of chain of custody, is when an administration changes, you're supposed to give classified information, explain what there's a lot of detail to that handover. Here, none of this stuff had been reported. It was literally a hidden, like classified annex that showed foreign sources and showed all the stuff that honestly was showing how they were going to push the collusion narrative prior to launching Crossfire Hurricane. So all the stuff that we've discovered that Tulsi has been talking about, this, and I don't know what's in there yet, it hasn't all been revealed, but this may end up being evidence that backs up Tulsi's claim.
So this bag was not burned. It was in the burned bag, but it hadn't yet been burned?
Correct. At least as far as the reporting goes.
Here's the deal, is that nothing goes anywhere in Washington. When was the last time you saw anyone in Washington really get prosecuted for serious crimes? Pelosi and a lot of other people are doing these ridiculous stock trades. The woman is worth over $100 million on a $200,000 salary, and complained when someone said that they should stop trading stocks. So it doesn't seem like anything ever happens. I know Tulsi came out and talked about Obama's treasonous conspiracy with this Russia collusion hoax. Obama's immune, so it doesn't matter what she digs up and finds on him. But the people, Clapper and Comey, under him, are they going to face prosecution? I would love it if they did. But the problem is that you see this administration come out and make these giant claims. And we saw this in the first round, and nobody got locked up for anything in the first round. So in the second round, are they going to go after these people? Are they really putting together solid cases and going to go after them? Or is this just a whole bunch of nothing? And if
I just want to add on to something you said, because I think it's actually a really good point. Golan, people do get in trouble in Washington when your name is Trump and you're in Trump's orbit. They do, because what do Republicans do? So Pam Bondi comes out and makes these statements, and then that's it. Why is Pam Bondi not holding a press conference on a weekly basis to keep the Americans abreast of the situation and to keep the heat on Democrats? Why is she not doing that? And it's really, really, it's annoying. It's disrespectful to the people that voted President Trump in. And it's like, Pam Bondi, you have no problem getting on the news and talking, but then you stop when it drives me insane, Golan.
Amen, man. I do not understand what Pam Bondi's strategy has been since the beginning, when she decided to shoot her mouth off about stuff she didn't know, in the assumption that she was going to find something that was going to make her look good. I don't know why she beat her chest about any of these topics, whether it's about Russia collusion or whether it's about Epstein or any of these other things. There's a movie called The Civil Act and a book as well. It's a wonderful book, better book than a movie, but a really great movie too, because Robert Duvall is unbelievable in it. In one moment, he says, as a lawyer, never ask a question of a witness unless you know what the answer is going to be. I feel like these people, many of whom are actually lawyers, forgot this rule. And what they keep doing is, we're going to do a thing. And they have no idea if they're going to be able to do a thing. And they say, we're going to deliver this. And they have no idea if they're going to find information that's going to be deliverable to the public. Instead of just saying, I'm going to do my job, keep my head down, and then going, oh, I found something. Now I get to have a victory lap because I have a piece of information that I'm going to bring you that is meat you can eat and not just a menu you can look at, but we have no food in the kitchen. I don't understand it here, and I have not understood it since the beginning. You're absolutely right. She should be shouting about this shit from the mountaintops.
And here's the difference is, man, this is what ruined Trump's first term, was Democrats were all lockstep screaming the same narrative forever, no matter what it was. And Republicans do not do this. I don't get it. We all know, and we're watching it in podcast Joe Rogan world too, right? Joe Rogan says something, every podcaster underneath him follows lockstep, right? And Democrat media, legacy media does the same thing with anything Democrats say. Why can Republicans not just get together for 1 week and say, you know what, this week we're all going to talk about this? And
it's more than that. I don't even care about the parrots repeating what everybody says. I care about action. I'm hoping that these guys could.
Well, that brings action, is my point.
I don't know if it brings action. I mean, these guys, if they haven't learned the lesson from the last 4 years of allowing an administration to weasel their way in through the Russia collusion hoax, right? So a lot of that swayed the election. A lot of people wanted no part of him by the time we were done with the last Trump administration. And they spread lies. They did all this stuff. And now you're going to let them off the hook. You're going to let the people that did all these crimes, that opened the border, that got Americans killed in Afghanistan. We left billions of dollars of military equipment in the hands of people that want to chop off all of our heads. How does that make any sense? They could have given it to friendly countries, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, whatever. They didn't. They just left it there to the Taliban. Explain that.
Man, so look, I agree with you that if you're going to step back and look at each case individually, you could say this was the right way to do it, this was the wrong way to do it. But I think that it's dangerous to not recognize that their Borg-like action doesn't spin results. Because look, as we've talked about before, the Democratic Party doesn't debate in public. They march in sync. And say what you will, that discipline, whatever you want to call it, discipline, crassness, moral bankruptcy, whatever you want to call it, it works. And if it's a false narrative, it doesn't matter. If it's a bloated spending bill, it doesn't matter. If it's their tantrum over a Supreme Court decision, it doesn't matter. When they are all screaming the same thing on all the networks simultaneously, using the same words as we've talked about, words that I didn't hear on Monday ever before, and on Tuesday, all of them are saying it, what we see is that it shifts the public narrative. Look no further than what's happening with Gaza. And in the Republican side of things, we've got a constitutional scholar over here. We've got a meme lord over here. We've got 12 libertarians over here. And everyone's arguing with everybody. And what happens is you look at that group and you go, I hope they can pull some kind of vote together. While the other side, 65 out of 65 almost every time. Like there's almost no deviation. And there is power in that kind of coordinated message, even if it comes from a false, dishonest place.
So I have a theory about that. And my theory is that the Democrats are absolutely okay spending lots of other people's money. So they are spending tax dollars everywhere. I mean, giving Stacey Abrams $1 billion to change out stoves in Atlanta is a perfect example, right? So when they're doling out cash, trillions of dollars to, let's say, Planned Parenthood or any of these other NGOs, and they funneled lots of money, billions of dollars to these NGOs, it's a bribe scheme. It basically says, you go along with whatever it is we say, and we will make sure your NGO gets well funded, right? So they're bribing and they do that. And Republicans in general, or conservatives, are trying to spend less. So not all of them. There's a lot of them that shove a lot of pork into a lot of these bills. But on a whole, the basic platform of the Republicans is smaller government, less tax. And that doesn't work if you're trying to bribe all of your members. So they're saying, hey, there's going to be less business going into your state because we're going to cut funding to this giant, whatever it is, boondangle thing that we were building in your state. We don't think we should fund it, right? So then that guy comes out and he goes, well, I'm not going to back you on whatever thing you're doing. And that's why there's a lot more discontent, disunity in the Republican Party than there is in the Democratic Party.
Okay, I have to totally just absolutely say you're in on the moon on this. You're on the moon on this, and I will quote Richard Nixon and Golan and say, when he referred to Republicans saying most of them aren't fit to be dog catchers, it's just not something they're good at. They were really good at it under Newt Gingrich, probably the last best House Speaker we've had. He knew how to whip people in shape. Remember, there's a House whip, and that is an extremely important job. We are terrible at the whip. We just are.
But what have we been terrible at recently? Mike Johnson got the big, beautiful bill over the hill.
That's not what I'm. Thank God, Mike Johnson. About? Mike Johnson. Oh, you're bringing up one case that happened 3 or 4 months ago. Do you want to go 20, 30 years in the past of
No.
how
I want you to give me one case right now that we haven't been able to get together on and pass.
I'll give you exactly, which is what everybody's talking about. We still have 60 senators 60 nominations at least that Chuck Grassley hasn't confirmed. 60 Republicans that have not been confirmed, at least. And that's and everybody's like wondering. I know Chuck Grassley's in his 90s and he moves a little slowly, but God damn it, man, get these confirmations passed. So that's something that is a little wildly bizarre that we're not doing right now.
Okay, so that's one guy that hasn't confirmed a whole bunch of things. What else?
But that's a huge thing. You're not talking about a little thing. You're talking about people that have massive jobs that are not getting confirmations that would easily pass because it's a Republican Senate. I mean, listen, we could cherry pick situations. I mean, you could say Ron Johnson, yes, gratefully got everybody on board, but this is not normally the case with conservatives. I was making a basic overall statement, and that is that the Democrats are really okay with raising taxes and stealing tax dollars and sending it to NGOs. Well, that's a whole other story.
Not. The Republicans have implemented Doge, so there's a whole bribe scheme that's removed, and that is a very big motivator for a lot of these people to just vote for whatever the Democrat whip tells them to vote for. Because I will let
Golan decide on who's right.
Golan's a professor. I'd go with Golan.
I think that there's validity to both of what you're saying. I think that we have had.
What are you, a politician now?
I look at absolutely. I look at what Nancy Pelosi used to do, like her or hate her, and we'll talk more about Pelosi in a little bit, thanks to Josh Hawley. Pelosi was someone who was the de facto whip, and almost like I talk about Trump has these mafia tactics, Pelosi had mafia tactics too. She held her group in a way that very few did until the wokey wokers started to degrade her. And then it was time for her to take her dentures and walk away. But up until that point, he made sure that everybody was almost afraid to step out of line. Now, part of that is because of the way they do work in lockstep, and part of it is the way that he held them with an iron fist. And today, you're watching a new thing happen. You're watching the woke side of the Democrats start to take over the party. The radical fringe is starting to write policy. Look no further than what's happening now, how the entire Democratic power structure is bending the knee for the radical jihadi Mamdani in New York, a guy who defends Hamas and downplays October 7th and talks about global jihad. And the DNC is dead silent. There's not a spine amongst them. Back in the day, it wouldn't have been this way. He would have been a guy who was told to sit down and wait his turn or wait until some of the more traditionals are being kicked out of office right now. And everyone is scared. You're watching Schumer recognizing this political poison if he speaks up. And so he just shrinks into himself along with all the rest of these spineless jellyfish. And so, you're watching a lack of power on both sides. Luckily, we were able to get the big, beautiful bill go through. But there is plenty of stuff right now, men, that is not happening, that would have been happening if we hadn't had a bunch of bullshit rifts within the party that the whip is not holding in place. And I think it's something we have to recognize because we got to fix it, or else we are going to continue to have problems that are either going to drag on or we're going to lose altogether.
And I'll actually defend Mend a little bit because there was actually a story about this today.
I was defending Mend.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why. Because I'm right.
He's so handsome. What can I say?
Because you were just defending him because you always disagree with him. So you had to come up with one defense of him. But because Trump is winning now so much, that's bringing the party, in a sense, together. It's like nobody wants to not be on the train right now. But I could only imagine if these deals that he did not work out, we would be hearing a very different story as opposed to with Biden when the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Obviously didn't work. Everybody, greatest thing, right? Everybody, he's full mental capacity, right? Every single bought, story sold. Okay, let's move on to this Josh Hawley thing. And really what made Josh Hawley sort of even more famous was his running ability, as he, on January 6th, you see him running underneath the House, underneath the Capitol. It's just like
you have made fun of this a lot. I think your quote on a previous episode, and I had to look it up because I didn't remember the running thing. You said, well, Josh Hawley, he's not going to become president, not after that running thing.
And I like Josh Hawley, by the way. I thought, and I don't understand what's going on. Trump unleashes on him today because he was the lone Republican that sided with Democrats. Can you please explain this story? Because it's extremely
It's not
confusing.
that he sided with Democrats. It's not accurate. I hate to say this because I feel like it doesn't make anybody look good, frankly. So Hawley put together something called the Pelosi Act, which I thought was one of the greatest trolls in the history of government, because it's not called Pelosi as in Nancy Pelosi. What a coincidence. It just happens to be called Pelosi, Preventing Elected Leaders from Owning Securities and Investment Act. By chance, the acronym is Pelosi. I mean, the fact that she happens to be someone who has made more money in the stock market, her and her husband, as to make Warren Buffett blush, has nothing to do with it, I'm sure. But in any case, the idea was to basically say that people who make decisions on what's going on in the marketplaces and what's going on in terms of regulation shouldn't be allowed to pre-use the information that they have to buy stocks and make millions of dollars. I think it pretty much makes a lot of sense because it allows for a lot of people to suddenly get corrupt accidentally or on purpose. The problem here is that the Democrats were not willing to go along with the bill, and he didn't have enough votes. And the Democrats basically said, if you want this to go through, you have to amend the bill. To amend the bill, not just to be sitting members of Congress or the House or the Senate or whatever, it also has to apply, and this is where the problem came in, to the president and the vice president of the United States. And Trump didn't like that. I don't think this makes anybody look great. He wanted the focus, Trump wanted the focus to be on investigating Pelosi specifically. He didn't want a law passed that wasn't going to affect her because it was after the fact, and that made her able to look like a hero of a stock reform by saying, you know, I support that retroactively now that I'm out and it's not going to affect me. So he didn't like the optics of it because he felt, and this is his words, he felt that Hawley did it in a way that helped the Democrats look good. And the part he didn't say was might hurt Trump himself. So it was just kind of a shit show because it started off as something that Trump supported. It started off as something that he felt would hurt Pelosi. And by the time we finally got to voting and implementing this thing, it became something that no longer was going to be effective for the specific goals that Trump had in mind. And so the whole thing fell apart between them.
And let me just add for the record, man, before I get to you, I like Josh Hawley. I've watched him do, I don't know why I was watching him on C-SPAN, actually talking to other senators, including when Romney was in the Senate and Rick Scott, and he was talking to them about this, and he's like, I'm the poorest person in the room, and he's not enriching himself while serving. So I have a lot of respect. That video that day, I feel terrible for him with that video because that video will always be shown if he ever chooses to run for president. And sorry to interrupt you, man.
No, I was going to say is that it makes no sense that anybody would be against this bill. I mean, I get why
nobody is against this bill. I mean, the people, everybody agrees with this. Sorry, man.
Everybody agrees with it, but they couldn't get it over the line. They couldn't get this thing passed. And as Golan pointed out a long time ago, the original salary for congressmen was a per diem. They got paid. It was not to make money. And the fact that we have this mechanism where someone can sit on a panel, know that we're going to be buying 500 planes from Lockheed Martin next week, and nobody in the public knows it yet. Then they go out and buy Lockheed Martin stock and they make $1 trillion. That's how Pelosi got her wealth. And the fact that they can't outlaw that, they can't ban that, and they can't get away from that, just shows how corrupt the system is. They need to get something like that over the line for the sake of the people. That's what I have to say about that. Get it over the line.
So did the law get passed? Did the bill get passed?
Bill, from everything that I've read, the bill was passed, and ultimately the reason why Trump was so upset was because of how it got passed.
Right, and the bill will land on his desk, and he'll have to sign the bill one way or the other. So Hawley knows that Trump is going to have to sign this bill. I mean, Trump is going to have to end up signing this bill. So if he doesn't sign it, he looks terrible. And if he signs it, then he's got to relinquish everything that he's sort of financially doing, right?
Exactly. And he knows that if later on they decide to go after him using this bill, they will find some loophole to whatever. That's what he's worried about, is that there's going to be some kind of retribution later. He also knows, as you said, Judah, everybody, Republicans, Democrats, independents, they all agree that these people shouldn't be able to buy stock based on information only they have. That's clearly insider trading. Everybody agrees. So he knows he can't veto the bill. So he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. And he doesn't like that Hawley pushed him into that space. By the way, just as a quick history lesson, I'll make it very fast. I know this is the boring part, but men brought it up. And it's one of those things I find fascinating. A zillion years ago, you're talking about like 1700, 1800s. He's absolutely right. It was a per diem. The Congress got, it was like $6 a day, which was actually kind of decent money at the time. And the idea was it wasn't enough to make a living. That you were basically, if you were a lawyer or a farmer or a businessman or whatever, you came to DC, you had another job. You did this for a little while. The days that you were sitting there, they gave you $6 a day. It wasn't enough to sustain you all year round. And the whole point was that public service was meant to be temporary, not a lifelong profession. You couldn't sustain it otherwise. Around the 1850s, I don't remember exactly what year it was, they started doing annual salaries. And it was a hugely controversial thing. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because of where we are today. People thought it would turn politics into this like gravy train for the elites who could come in, or career politicians who would come in and basically, like the Bernie Sanders of the world, give no value to the world at all and just suck off the public teat forever. And today they're making, $175,000 a year. And then the Speaker of the House is making $225,000 a year or something to that effect. And it has absolutely become that. So they were right to be afraid. And it would be awesome if, and I know no politician's going to do this, but it would be truly awesome if someone said, we're going back to the old system, because then you would see people who actually cared be in office, who actually were willing to come in and sacrifice a little bit to do government, not see it as a way to just steal money like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and actually then leave after they accomplished a goal. It would actually change everything for the better. Just thought I'd mention it. It's interesting trivia.
Have you ever heard of what they call it, the great speaker lie? Do you know what that is?
No.
This is my last story. Anytime a speaker says this is my last story, they go on for another 45 minutes. So I just wanted to say thank you for that very short story. And we're going to wrap it up in a second, but I want to just mend, this is important. So the Washington Post today put out the names, supposed names, because again, they're going with the Hamas news of 18,500 children that were murdered, or they're supposedly, murdered probably by Hamas. And the Washington Post put that out today. You can't retract that once you put that out.
No, so they used the Hamas statistics. Let's not even call it Run Health Ministry. I don't know why
that's why I said Hamas.
It's just Hamas. Hamas is putting this out, and they count everyone who's 17 and younger as a child, and they also give guns to anyone who's 10 or older to go fight. Yeah, the crossover there is immense. How many of these kids were actual combatants? How many were actual kids? How many were just adults that they changed the age to kids? None of this is verifiable. And the fact that a mainstream American newspaper would run with that is just shameful.
Yeah. And Golan, I want to end with you because at the end of yesterday's show, you wrote, I had a whole thing about something with World War II. If you want to get into that, do you remember that, Golan?
Ooh, I do. And it's still relevant today, as you said it would be, is that Israel has basically decided we're going to go a little more scorched earth, something they should have done a very long time ago. Israel has now made a statement that they are going to begin putting deadlines on getting the hostages back and finding a proper end to the war in which Hamas surrenders their position and gives us back all of our stolen people. And if it doesn't happen within a certain specific period of time, Israel is going to begin annexing land from Gaza. Now, two things to know. This is not something to be done lightly, because in order to return annexed land requires a massive, I don't have the numbers in front of it, but it requires a massive number of people within the Israeli government to vote all in favor of doing so. And in the polarized times that exist now, and I think will exist for the foreseeable future, if not forevermore, you will never get that number of hands to raise in the air simultaneously. And so the land that is annexed today is likely to remain annexed forever. There is a theory that the terrorists, the Hamas terrorists, the Gazan terrorists, the Palestinian terrorists don't care about their people. We know this to be true. They regularly use them as cannon fodder. They put them in harm's way as often as they can. They kill their own children, as we know has been proven time and again. They starve their people. We're watching it happen live and in person, despite what every mainstream media source is telling us. But they do care about land. because this is where they get to say, and this is Palestine. And if you don't have land to say it on, well, then you don't have shit. And so this is where we're actually going to take something from them they actually care about. We'll see if this moves the needle. Now, I had this conversation with someone yesterday where I said, or 2 days ago now, where I said, I think this is a great idea. I'm very excited about this. And they said, well, if we annex that land and we move the people off of it, this is ethnic cleansing. Now, ethnic cleansing, by the way, the legal definition of ethnic cleansing continues to change and is as vague as you can possibly imagine, because almost every war in history has ended with some kind of moving of a population, one way or the other. The thing I wanted to mention was the comparison to what happened in World War II. You're going to bear with me as I do this. So there was a group in Germany called the Volksdeutsch. The Volksdeutsch were the Germans removed from their homes after World War II, who were mostly not Nazis, not Nazi soldiers. Most of them didn't even support the Nazi party, but they were part of the country that had launched the war. As a result, they were kicked out of their homes. That land was taken from them, and they lived for centuries after the war all over the place. They were in Poland, they were in Hungary, they were in Russia, they were in Romania, they were everywhere, right? They were essentially refugees, even though they settled elsewhere. Years later, people looked back at this. Some in retrospect called it ethnic cleansing. Fair enough. Some called it a tragic but completely understandable consequence of Germany's wartime aggression. Then there's my take on it. What I say is this is the application of real consequences to starting a genocidal war. Terrible, sure, unimaginable consequences. Absolutely. I feel bad for everybody, but it's beyond military defeat. These things, such as utter devastation of cities, territorial losses, forced expulsions of civilians, here's why it works. And here's why you can look at Germany to see that it works, because they have a profound and lasting effect on the German psyche. And that just maybe that collective trauma that came from all the awful punishment, all the shit we can feel bad about today for trying to murder everybody, shattered any kind of nationalistic appetite for renewed militarism. And may be exactly the reason why Germany never tried that shit again. So that's my opinion. I'll let everyone else think about theirs, but it looks like we may have history repeat itself now in Gaza if they don't give us our people back now.
Not just Germany. So India, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, same thing. At the end of that war, millions of people were displaced and forced to move to the new countries as they were formed. The Hindus had to get out of Pakistan. The Muslims had to get out of India. Not all of them, but millions. And they resettled and they got absorbed into their new countries. They are not refugees. They got absorbed. And 800,000 Jews had to get resettled from Arab lands. They got kicked out of those places. They're not refugees. They were resettled. They were absorbed. The only people that were not resettled or absorbed was the Arabs that were displaced into their Arab brethren homelands.
Right, they got their own definition. They're only people in the world who get this definition thanks to UNRWA.
To this day, there's a two-class system for Palestinians in Lebanon, Palestinians in Syria, Palestinians, so-called Palestinians. They're all just Syrians and Jordanians and Egyptians. But they put them in these camps, and they created this thing called UNRWA, which was to perpetuate the destruction of Israel, and as a only way to remedy the displacement of these people. Not normal. It's the only place that it happens. They should be absorbed by Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and end it. There is no two-state solution. The two-state solution is Israel and Jordan. They have two states. They got over 70% of the mandate of Palestine. That is their homeland.
Well said, both of you. And just to everybody to understand one more thing, there's, all these countries coming together and all the Arab countries coming together today. They're going to go to the UN and do this ridiculous thing that's not going to work, calling for statehood for Palestine. There's one thing they threw in the end, that Israel must agree to the right of return.
Wow. But one thing that did come out of that was somewhat good was that they all said that Hamas must surrender, lay down its arms, and cannot be part of the government, and they should release the hostages.
Yeah,
Don't you
except
understand that
Except
this
you
is
said
just a
that.
publicity stunt? It's just a
Of course it
publicity
is.
stunt for
Of
them to
course it
try to
is.
maintain the last gasp of a two-state solution because they recognize it's going away. This bullshit that we've been talking about for years, this fantasy of a two-state solution, which they have basically told us over and over again they don't want anyway. They want the whole thing and to kill all the Jews. This moment, we're supposed to think how benevolent of everybody to finally do the thing they should have done on October 8th. The fact that they're doing it now is just desperation and a publicity stunt and a bunch of nonsense. And the way it's being reported in the press, well, for the first time, they're pressuring Hamas to relinquish power and screw you. We see through it. We see through you. We know who you are. We know what you're doing.
I
Qatar
actually
and
think
Egypt
I
and
think
all
that's
the rest.
something else. I think it's something else. What's telling is that it's the first time. We're almost 2 years into this war and they've never condemned Hamas. They've never called for the release of the hostages. So this is the first time. So what that tells you is how feckless and how inefficient and how just completely useless the UN is that it took them 2 years to make that statement. That's what I take out of this.
But again, I want to say to your point though, just to end it, is you're celebrating this thing, but then at the last part of the statement they say the right of return, which would be suicide for Israel. So that and for people that are not familiar with the right of return, would be for everybody that was there pre-67 would become citizens again and would be taken into Israel as Israeli citizens, which Israel will never allow because there will be no Israel. So that
it's actually a plan. The right of return is the plan from the Arabs after they realized that they couldn't kill and crush Israel with war. What they said was, we want to flood your country with millions of people, and then we want you to make them citizens. And then you just get, it's a democracy. You get voted out. You're done. It was another way to kill Israel. It's so blatant. It's so obvious, and it's never going to happen.
That's my point of what a joke it was, well, why they released that today. But on that note, we have run out of time. I want to thank everybody that's been listening to this show. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading us on Apple Podcasts, also Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review. It helps us out a lot. So please go and do that after you listen to us. And maybe we should start putting that in the middle in case people stop listening to us after half an hour. Always rate and review us. And
hola to our fans in Mexico, number 61 in news and commentary.
And of course, thank everybody. And go to Daily Cheat Sheet on Substack, go to Daily Cheat Sheet on YouTube, go to Daily Cheat Sheet on Instagram, go on, just posted something, go to X at TD Cheat Sheet. And of course, you can find us on Truth at the Daily Cheat Sheet, and Golan and myself. You can interact with us. On that note, I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.